A few years ago, Jordan Peterson said something really bizarre. And I don't mean bizarre in the way he's normally bizarre. This is a different kind of bizarre. Let me show you.
And I was standing in my living room, and then I had this very strange experience. I can't explain this properly because there's no way of really describing it, but I'll do my best. So in Renaissance paintings, especially in the earlier phase of the Renaissance, the sky opening up and God sort of peering forth through the clouds. And that's exactly what seemed to happen to me, is that I had this sense. It was like a vision, although I was still in my living room and knew it. But inside the theater of my imagination, I could feel the sky opening up. Now, it wasn't the sky. It was, I would say, the only way I can really think about it is that it was something like another dimension. And then I could feel this force descend upon me, which I think was something that, would have been considered classically something like the Holy Ghost, I suppose. And it filled me with this intense sense of paradisal. Well, it was like being in heaven for some brief period of time, and I could feel myself transformed, transmuted as a consequence of this experience. And it was as if I was in the presence of something that was living, and I suppose that was an experience of God, if you want to put it that way. That's certainly what it seemed like, and I felt that I could live that way. I could live transfigured like that permanently if I desired it. And I thought, my God, I wouldn't be able to walk down the street in this sort of elevated state, let's say. I don't know how I would act. I don't know how I would interact with people. I don't know how people would interact with me. I just don't think that I could do it. And then I felt that whatever had descended, it seemed that as if it was sorrowful, and it departed from me slowly, and with no punitive intent, and I wouldn't say with any dissatisfaction. It was as if a gift had been offered that I wasn't in no position to receive.
When I heard this the first time, it actually made a lot of things click for me with respect to Jordan Peterson. You see, he's become notorious for being kind of spacey and beyond logic, but it reminded me of the story of another person you would know. Because I am moved by a certain divine and spiritual influence. This began with me from childhood, being a kind of voice which, when present, always diverts me from what I am about to do, but never urges me on. Now, the word in ancient Greek used to describe this spiritual sign is daimonion. This is a precursor to our English word demon. I would, however, like to stress, in Attic Greek, the word daimonion would have referred not only to the devil on your shoulder, but the angel on the other shoulder as well. So, on trial for his life for corrupting the youth, Socrates' defense is, I'm acting this way because a demon is telling me to, and the gods sent me to do this. Not exactly the defense you would expect from who some might call the father of philosophy. It's also not something you would expect him to die for. And yet Socrates drinks the hemlock and is killed because his spiritual guide told him not to leave the city. Well, actually, if we just consider what that would be like to have a vision like that, would not this inform your worldview? I recall the Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists Jubilee video making strides on the internet.
That I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smartass.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something, you are.
If you weren't there for it, the video was actually originally titled Christian versus 20 Atheists, but Jordan Peterson made a stink about being called a Christian, thus we have this title now. So we have this weird situation where the guy is basically at every possible opportunity defending the Bible, defending Christian, at least symbolisms, but when his back is against a wall, he doesn't say, I'm a Christian. In fact, he says, I didn't say that. I never said I was a Christian, and kind of leaves it in this vague, ambiguous place. I understand why people criticize him for this, but if you had an ineffable, indescribable vision of God, supposedly, and it wasn't exactly Christian, but it wasn't exactly not, what would you do? I mean, look at his first claim in the video.
My first claim, atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting.
This is actually a claim that Eastern thinkers have been making for a long time. Basically, they argue that God is unknowable. I mean, there's a doctrine known as neti neti, which goes something like, if you can point it out or name it, that's not God. So you say, well, is God goodness or love? Well, no, God is not either of those things. Whatever concept filled your mind when you said those words is still not big enough. Now, I'm not asking you to believe that these visions really occurred or that Socrates' spiritual sign is actually telling him what not to do. You don't have to believe that if you don't want to. But I am trying to invite you to consider that they believe that happened to them. I think Jordan Peterson believes that happened to him. Whether or not it really did almost is besides the question. What difference does that make for him? So we have a vision here that, at least to Jordan, may as well have been real as a vision. At the end of this clip that I showed you of Jordan describing his vision, he says, there have been echoes of this experience a few times since then.
I had a couple of experiences like that, like echoes of it a couple of times after that. And so, anyways, that was a very, very powerful experience. I've certainly never forgotten that.
I would challenge Jordan, if he's comfortable with it, to share these echoes with us as well. There may be more people out there who relate to this kind of thing than he assumes. Imagine for a second you were a person who had visionary experiences like this. And in the world today, that basically means you're stupid, gullible, superstitious, and you need to be on medication. It's something that we've ignored for the last 100 years, but it's something that happens. I'm kind of tired of pretending it doesn't. So, my criticism of Jordan, given that this is the backdrop, I believe, of his philosophy, is first of all, that he thinks he can argue on behalf of it logically. Or even that he's just attempted to. The fact that he went on the Jubilee show at all to debate 20 people at once shows me that there's a little bit of hubris here. God is an ineffable, in other words, indescribable experience. What makes you think you could join a debate and defend logically an indescribable thing? Second, his focus has shifted. Jordan is not who he used to be. Let me explain. In this book, a man finds the secrets of the universe by hiding away on an isolated mountainside. And after many years of discovering the secrets of being, he traverses back down the mountain with the intention of telling everybody else what he had learned. He began to explain the secrets of the universe to the crowd. At this point, I read his words. And all the people laughed and clicked with their tongues. Zarathustra, however, grew sad and said to his heart, "They don't understand me. I'm not the mouth for these ears. Perhaps I have lived too long in the mountains. Too long have I listened to the brooks and trees. Now I speak to them as the goat herds." For whatever reason, whoever Zarathustra turned into as a result of his isolated meditation made him appear to others as nonsensical. They literally laugh at him. I want to be clear. I'm not comparing Jordan Peterson to Nietzsche's Overman, but I am trying to point out that when one dives into the psyche and takes the subconscious contents therein seriously, it might start to disconnect them from everyone else. They might start not to make so much sense to their friends and family. In fact, 4 years after Thus Spake Zarathustra was published, the author of the book was in Italy and he saw a horse being flogged by a cab driver. Something about this made him snap. He ran over to the horse and hugged its neck, and he kept saying over and over again, "I understand you. I understand you. I understand you." He didn't talk very much after that for the rest of his life. Now, when I was taking philosophy in college, the general accepted explanation of this event was that Nietzsche had syphilis and his brain just wasn't working anymore. Well, yeah, I guess that's possible. I don't think that's the whole story. I think Nietzsche was personally feeling this disconnection, and I think Jordan Peterson is feeling this disconnection as well. He is stepping into magisteria that is not logical, it's supra-logical. Do you understand? This is why Jordan thinks the way he does. Normal, average, everyday people see logic as the most fundamental thing, the thing on the very bottom supporting everything else. But anyone who's had a visionary experience like this sees it the opposite way. The shared collective consciousness of humanity is the basis of reality. Logic rests on top of that. So Jordan's mistake is trying to stuff in the divine into logic. It doesn't fit. It's bigger than logic. There's nothing logical about the symbolic interpretation of dreams, for example, but it is something we have always done, way longer than we've been logical. So if something like that were to happen to you, even though you didn't ask for it, And then you, as a result of having the experience, were utterly changed in your worldview forever. And you couldn't even argue on behalf of it. What would you do? So as wonderful as Atheist tears into Jordan Peterson, for the 117th time, Alex O'Connor, we could make a video about someone else occasionally. Because try as we might to run every single statement he says through a fine-tooth logic comb, ultimately the magisterium being discussed is not bound to logic in any respect at all. For example, these resurrection images occur throughout all of mythology. It's not just Christ. I mean, we have Orpheus, we have Dionysus. This is a recurring symbolic representation of something deeper that lies within our psyche. But the symbol itself is not the point. It's what it's representing. So we create these symbols to represent this abstract something that we detect is there but can't exactly put into words. That's where all these things come from. That's not logical. But who said the thoughts within your psyche, the symbols that unfold, the dreams you have, the visions that occur, or the spontaneous epiphanies that strike you, who says any of that has to be logical? And so I criticize Jordan for even bringing it onto those grounds. Like, what the hell are you doing? You're going to debate the existence of God and win? Really? That's like coming to the realization that you're actively dreaming and being like, wait, it's not logical that I'm flying right now. Well, maybe not on Earth, but in the psyche, anything goes. Logic doesn't carry here. That's how we get all our best art, by the way. There's nothing logical about The Hobbit, and yet it is still the best adventure book ever written. The only thing logicking all over your dream is going to do is make your dream shittier. So right there is Jordan Peterson's biggest mistake. He seems to think he's capable of presenting these things in a logical manner that other people will accept. Jordan, that's not how it works, man. Like, throughout all of human history, all the religious literature, all the so-called prophets, you are the guy who can go on Jubilee and successfully logically explain this. Sorry, that strikes me as hubris. But I'm not just going to criticize him. I want to make a suggestion in the event that he sees this video. Kierkegaard wrote about something he calls indirect communication. Basically, the idea is that religious truths, ethical truths like this can't be conveyed through typical methods, like argument or debate or even just speaking. He notes how common it is for people when they're being preached at to basically just become defensive and put up mental shields. Kierkegaard argues that true inward faith cannot be just handed down as though it's an objective thing. It's an inward and personal decision. So Kierkegaard's indirect communication is not him telling people that God is real or arguing on behalf of the symbolism or anything. It's genuinely just letting them come to discover the truth themselves through personal struggle. Now, of course, your personal conduct and your own leap to faith can inspire others to investigate for themselves, but you are ultimately not handing them this faith. It's something they have to come to themselves. So and this is an assumption, but what I think I see with the Jubilee video is that maybe you thought you could talk them into it. You know, I really love this lecture Jordan Peterson gave so many years ago. But he reads a children's book to a classroom full of people, and it's about a dragon. But he is practicing indirect communication. He's giving them things to think about, and he is technically teaching, but he's not debating. He's not logicking. He's reading a story and allowing the brain juices in his audience to flow as a natural result of their hearing it. He's not trying to direct the flow of those brain juices. You understand what I'm saying? This is one of my favorite Jordan Peterson moments in his whole career. I really recommend you watch this because this is when he was firing on all cylinders. Something about him is different now. He's changed. He used to be able to just be weird and go there, even if you shouldn't. I'd like to close the video with one more criticism that I feel is fair. He seems to be taking a political slant these days. The fact that he's with the Daily Wire to me is horrifying, and I'm sorry if you disagree with that. 20 years ago, Jordan was the kind of guy to read a children's storybook to a classroom full of people just in hopes that they might understand what he's trying to insinuate. And of course, the storybook's not the purpose, but it helps us get there. But modern Jordan doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel like he wants me to slay my dragons. He doesn't want me to clean my room. He wants me to subscribe to Daily Wire Plus and also his online college program. So Jordan, what are you here on Earth to do? What's your aim? Are you here to go on Joe Rogan and talk about your fancy suits some more? or are we here to delve into things that are a little bit deeper? It's so funny because Jordan Peterson, I would say, changed my life, but I would have to caveat that by saying the older version of him changed my life. The one that was more focused, the one that had an aim that felt true, not the one who adorns himself in fancy clothing. The one that read storybooks about dragons to classrooms full of people in hopes that they would just understand what he was trying to say. Not the one who debates about, white men and gender equality, and none of that, to be quite honest, is important at all. That's just all shit we made up. But early Jordan, he seemed to have his focus set on what really mattered. He was focused on that sweet, subtle, hard to explain something underneath life. The one that motivates us to go out and create beautiful art and have an adventure. One that is loving, helping people become their true, capital S, self. I can't say that's his aim anymore. And that's too bad.